St. Barnabas, 1230 WBVP, 1460 WNBA, and beavercountyradio.com.
Now, it's time to talk on Teleforum on Beaver County Radio. 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, 99.3 FM, and beavercountyradio.com. And now, here is the host of the show, Eddy Crow.
It is always a good thing when I get to see Dale, but I'm going to be honest, it's a little bit better this morning. Dale Reckless is going to be my guest the first hour. Dale Reckless of MRS Physical Therapy. Dale brought a guest with him, Dr. Eric Interval. Did I say it right?
Yeah, that's right.
All
Just
right.
like the word.
And here's why this is better than usual, Dale. First off, great seeing you. You and Dr. Interval provide me 1 hour of not talking about politics. I am so happy. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks.
All right. How's your spring, summer so far?
It's been awesome.
Hadn't pulled any muscle because you follow your own advice?
Absolutely. I stretch twice a day, every day. I don't miss it.
Do you really?
Absolutely. Yep. I tell all my patients that when they come in. They said, what do you need to do? I said, do what I do. I said, I've had back issues myself in the past, and I've had it really excruciating low back pain. And if I keep up with my stretches, I can keep the pain away. So as long as I stretch twice a day, I'm good to go.
All right. When do you stretch? First thing in the morning before you go to bed?
You got it. Yep.
All right. 10 minutes, 20 minutes? We're ignoring your guests completely already.
You don't have to spend that much time doing it. Just a couple minutes of doing the right stretches, and that's what we teach you at MRS Physical Therapy.
All right. Why did you bring an ear, nose, and throat man in?
Yeah, so, I had this idea a little while ago. I realized there was a lot of doctors retiring in Beaver County, and I thought it'd be neat to try something different and bring in some of the new doctors that are coming into the area to introduce to the listeners. I get a lot of patients that ask me, who should I go to for this or that?
Right.
There's actually been 4 ENT doctors that have retired in the last couple of years. So we're fortunate to have Dr. Eric Interval that's come to the area, so I wanted to introduce him to the community. And talk about, what an ear, nose, throat doctor does, how does that correlate with physical therapy? How do we work with him at MRS Physical Therapy, and just give him an opportunity to introduce himself to the community and what he brings to Beaver County and Butler County.
All right. How long have you been in the community?
Well, first, I appreciate that, Dale. Thank you for bringing me on here.
You're welcome.
I just started in January. Previous to this, I was in a different county for 3 years, and prior to that, I finished training up. And so I'm not new to ENT, but I'm new to Beaver County here.
All right. What brought you here?
So I met with the practice here, ENT and Allergy Specialists of Western Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And I was just really impressed by the practice they'd put together. And then I went and visited Beaver, and I liked the town here. And so
So you literally, you were 3 years into where you were,
Right.
and you said, no, this is a better deal.
Right.
Were you pleasantly surprised because Beaver County, it has a reputation, and it's growing out of that reputation, but what were your expectations? Because to take a job, that's one thing, but you don't just come in to take the job. You're looking at the community. What sold you about the community?
So I think it's a good community. I like rivers. I don't know if that's a strange answer or not.
No, that's absolutely.
There's definitely plenty of rivers around here, and I like just the community seemed like a nice small town kind of feel, but you still get a lot of the perks of being next to Pittsburgh. And so there were a lot of benefits to Beaver County. And then the patient populace, there's young and old, and the whole mix, the whole breadth.
All right, let me ask you this. How did you two get hooked up where Dale knew about what you were doing and maybe wanting to come here?
Well, Dale, after I joined, Dale saw that I was new to the practice, came to introduce himself. And as coincidence has it, that morning I had pulled my back. And so I asked him to help me.
Did he yell at you about not stretching adequately?
He did, and he helped me. And now I've been stretching. Maybe once a day. I need to go to twice a day like you do, but my back is much better now than it was before, almost like it was 10 years ago, which is great. So that's how we got to meet in the first place. Really, to answer your question more to the point, though, we share a lot of patients. I see a lot of dizziness, vertigo, those kinds of things.
Okay.
And sometimes it's a medical issue, and sometimes, most of the time, people also benefit a lot from physical therapy. As the population ages. And I don't want to say that aging is everything. There's a lot of medical disorders that occur to people that aren't aged as well. As the population ages and as vertigo becomes more and more common, dizziness becomes more and more common, people really need to get in with physical therapy. Because as we know, falls are a huge risk for the elderly. And they're a risk also for people that are not elderly, but that suffer from vertigo and postural instability. And I believe that physical therapy, vestibular rehabilitation plays a big role in their recovery and in protecting them against falls.
Is medical science getting better at recognizing another field might be able to help? Because when ear, nose, and throat, I thought, I don't see the connection. As soon as you started talking about falls, the vestibular program at MRS are we getting better at saying, okay, we can solve this, but there's somebody else that might be able to solve it a little better or in conjunction with?
Correct. Yes,
Yeah.
I definitely agree that a multidisciplinary approach is the biggest thing you
That's
can
a
do.
family. That's a fancy medical school term, isn't it? What was that word?
What that means is we pull in all of the troops, and so it's not just me trying to fix people, and it's not just Dale, and it's not just the two of us. Often I'll also call patients' primary care doctors, make sure that they're teed up from a medication standpoint, make sure they're not on medications that cause dizziness. Try to treat them for any medical disorders that can cause dizziness, and then send them to Dale to help to strengthen their balance, strengthen their vestibular system, and give them the tools they need to keep things strong.
Dale, what made you think, okay, this young doctor, this guy is a benefit? Because just because he was a patient of yours, that's one thing. But to recommend and to bring in and introduce, you saw something in him. What
Yeah,
did
well, I
you
try to
see?
be aware of everything that's going on in Beaver County and Butler County, where my offices are. So I always keep an eye on who the doctors are, who we work a lot with. And I realized that, like I said earlier, we had a lot of doctors that were retiring in the area, and this was going to be an issue for my patients, really. And I've seen this in different types of practices. When a doctor retires, the patient, all of a sudden loses a connection of where they go to because they get very comfortable going to a certain doctor. They lose that connection. And
What happens then? Do they have to go to their insurance book and start flipping through and hoping?
Yeah, sometimes, and it's very, very varied. And that's why a lot of times they come to us because, they know us at MRS Physical Therapy and they trust us. They want to know, who they should go to and who they recommend. And when I met with Dr. Interval, I saw that we connected well as far as our perspectives on how to get a patient better and what important factors were to use the multidisciplinary approach. And I found that we were on the same page, so I thought it was a no-brainer for Dr. Interval to come in and speak with us today.
Did you have to sell it to Dr. Interval?
To talk with you, maybe a little bit.
No, well, sure. If you didn't get a breakfast out of him for doing this,
No, I'm always looking for people that have the same philosophy, where we try to pull in all different fields of medical specialty to try to help people to live their best lives. And so I don't think it's a unilateral pillar where it's just the MDs that fix people. I think that it's, everyone kind of plays a big role in getting people better. And to have somebody reach out to me and say, hey, can I help you out, was very refreshing and really helped a lot for me.
when does a doctor develop a medical philosophy? Is that happening during the educational process, or do you have to be a practicing physician to really dial in what you believe?
So I think it's both. So definitely a lot of what I took from the people that trained me. I went to West Virginia University for residency, and then I did fellowship in Nebraska. But really over time, my suspicion is my philosophy is going to change over the next decades, because this is the real art of medicine. There's a lot of things that you learn in the textbook and that you can follow the rules and do all that. But really, I think probably 80% of it is the art of medicine, where it's not a pure science. It's really trying to see what works best for each individual.
What did you learn in medical school that once you got out in the real world, you thought, okay, that's technically correct, but that's going to have to evolve?
Well, there's a lot of things that you learn in medical school that are correct,
Right.
And maybe not even evolve, but more just isn't as relevant to my particular day-to-day practice. A lot of like the basic sciences. In fact, I think they've revamped a lot of medical school curricula to be more focused on patient-centered rather than science-centered.
Dale, I want to go back to something you said earlier. Dale Reckless is my guest, and Dr. Eric Interval is my guest. It's Teleforum on 1230 WBVP, AM 1460 WMBA, 99.3 FM, presented by St. Barnabas, and also 95.7 FM. This is being live streamed right now. If you want to post a question in the comments section, that's fine. You said doctors are retiring. Why are doctors retiring? My first thought would be, well, they were closing COVID. Is that it, or nothing
I don't
to
think
do with
so.
it?
I think it's just just like the population of Beaver County is aging, doctors age as well. I think there was probably an influx of a lot of doctors during the same time period, because a lot of doctors are getting to that age of retirement, just like any individual out there is getting to that age of retirement. Doctors, they retire as well. So
with all of the medical facilities in Western PA, I would think it'd go the other way. You would have doctors coming here, like Dr. Annabelle. I would think you would have doctors coming here. Do they actively recruit doctors like they actively have to recruit nurses and support staff?
I think they do. Maybe Dr. Interval can answer that question a little bit more about how he got recruited. But I would think as a practice sees a doctor, if they want to stay in business, as a doctor, if they see a doctor getting ready to retire, they'll bring someone new in. But a lot of the practices just downright closed. Once that doctor, they had their own practice, and once they retired, the practice just closed down, and there wasn't a new doctor to come in. Dr. Interval is an exception to the case with his practice, as they, were forward thinking and realized they had doctors that were starting to get to the age of retirement, and some have retired, and they wanted to bring in some new doctors to keep the practice alive and prospering for Beaver County residents.
How did you get recruited originally?
So I reached out to them to just kind of talk about opportunities and see what they could have available. And
you reached out to who? The practice you're with now?
Yes.
When you reached out to them, was it just them, or were you just thinking of options and reached out to different places?
I reached out to several different places, thinking of options, seeing what I wanted to do. And this practice seemed like a great fit for me and for my family. And to answer your previous question, physician recruitment is actually a pretty big industry throughout the country. I think this was not quite how that goes exactly, because it kind of went the other way. A lot of times, though, there are, especially for areas in need, we'll get a bunch of emails and phone calls, get a couple a week trying to recruit.
Trying to get you, hey, we've got this practice here, we sure could use you.
Right.
Is that how you ended up in Nebraska, or was that where residency was?
No, so Nebraska was fellowship. So I did a residency in ear, nose, and throat, which a lot of people may not realize does include a lot of surgeries of the head and neck. But my interest was at the time in head and neck cancers. So I did extra training for head and neck cancer, both the surgery of that, including thyroid cancer, parathyroid disorders, and also I was trained in reconstruction.
How long does it take to get over squirming when you cut into somebody's head? That flinch before you actually go, okay, I'm trained for this, let's do this. How long does it take?
So that depends on the person.
Okay.
Truthfully, I've never had a squirming period.
Not even a flinch, a squint, nothing?
For me, no. But that varies by person. Some people, during their surgery clerkship in medical school, did get lightheaded and have to get sent home for the day. And then I got jealous because they got to study for the rest of the day. And here I was not studying, and they're getting a leg up.
So you didn't pretend? It's like, all right, if I pretend to get faint, I'll get to go home.
Oh, we talked about philosophy. That would be against my philosophy.
Oh, now we're back to the philosophy. All right. Dale Reckless is my guest. Always great to talk to Dale. With him today is Dr. Eric Interval. It's Teleforum on 1230 WBVP and 1460 WMBA, and we're talking about cutting people's heads open. It got weird early.
The best of Beaver County is easy to discover. It's right here on your radio. Tune in Beaver County Radio or watch the best of Beaver County live on Facebook or YouTube video this and every Thursday from 11 to 11:30. The program is made possible by St. Barnabas. For over 3 years now, the show has been dedicated to shining light on the great things going on right here in your neighborhood and the people that are making it happen. This Thursday, enjoy conversation and insight from an intriguing lineup of guests who are creating excitement and having an impact right here in Beaver County. Your friends and neighbors at St. Barnabas are pleased to support the best of Beaver County. The radio broadcast will also be replayed each week from 11:30 to noon on Sundays on Beaver County Radio. Archived Best of Beaver County videos can be viewed on the WBVP WMBA Facebook page. It's your chance to encounter the best of Beaver County with host Mike Romai this Thursday starting at 11. For more information, visit beavercountyradio.com.
Highmark Blue Cross, Blue Shield, and Allegheny Health Network are pleased to present a new show on Beaver County Radio called Heroes. Tune in every Saturday at 10 and Sunday at 12:30 for Heroes, a wonderful half-hour segment hosted by Jim Roddy that profiles many of the local heroes in this community. Click highmark.com for more information and then tune in for Heroes this Saturday at 10 and again Sunday at 12:30 on WBVP, WMBA, and 99.3 FM.
From epic city views to the best atmosphere in the game, every seat at PNC Park has a story. And on Sunday, May 22nd at 11:35 a.m., that story includes a celebration of youth baseball and softball. The first 1,000 fans to register will be invited on the field for a special pregame salute. And all kids 14 and under get a Key Brian Hayes replica jersey courtesy of Chevrolet. Register today at pirates.com/youthbaseball.
95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with WBVP, WMBA, and BeaverCountyRadio.com, invite you to tune in to Sounds of Faith. Tune in Sunday mornings from 7 until 9 for a mix of the best sacred music of all time. Sounds of Faith is brought to you by Crawford Tire and Beaver, the William Murphy Funeral Home, City Rescue Mission, MRS Physical Therapy, Circle of Friends, J&J Spratt Funeral Home, and Rome Monument and Inspirational Gifts. Sounds of Faith, uplifting, relaxing, and inspiring radio. Sunday mornings from 7 until 9 on 95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with WBVP, WMBA, and BeaverCountyRadio.com.
For an entrepreneur, life and business go hand in hand. Getting the most out of both sometimes can be as simple as a new idea or an insightful conversation. Join attorney and author Rocco Kaza, along with realtor and podcaster Eric McKenna, for The Entrepreneur Life, Beaver County Radio's newest show. The Entrepreneur Life airs from 10:30 to 12:30 this and every Saturday morning. Listen on Beaver County Radio or watch the video stream on Facebook and YouTube. Don't just get busier, become happier, and ultimately wealthier. Tune in to The Entrepreneur Life Saturday starting at 10:30 on Beaver County Radio.
Teleforum on the day after the election, Dale Reckless and Dr. Eric. Thank you so much for allowing me to talk about something. Dr. Eric Interval is with me. Dale Reckless of MRS Physical Therapy is with me. And it occurred to me, nobody knows how to get a hold of you, Doctor. Dr. Eric, tell people how to get a hold of you.
Well, I have two offices.
I've got a couple numbers here, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think the easiest way is just to call our office at 724-775-6602. That's the Beaver office, since I'm talking here in Beaver. I think that would be the easiest way for people to get a hold and make an appointment.
How do people get a hold of you, Dale? Cranberry.
MRS Physical Therapy in the heart of Bridgewater and Stone Point Landing. That number is 724-591-8121. And then we have an office in Cranberry, and the office in Cranberry is on Route 19 right next to North Park Lounge. That number is 724. I reversed the numbers. Cranberry is 724-591-8121, and Bridgewater is 724-728-7550.
News is next. More with Dale and Dr. Eric after news on Teleforum.
The best of Beaver County is easy to discover. It's right here on your radio. Tune in Beaver County Radio or watch the best of Beaver County live on Facebook or YouTube video this and every Thursday from 11 to 11:30. The program is made possible by St. Barnabas. For over 3 years now, the show has been dedicated to shining light on the great things going on right here in your neighborhood and the people that are making it happen. This Thursday, enjoy conversation and insight from an intriguing lineup of guests who are creating excitement and having an impact right here in Beaver County. Your friends and neighbors at St. Barnabas are pleased to support the best of Beaver County. The radio broadcast will also be replayed each week from 11:30 to noon on Sundays on Beaver County Radio. Archived Best of Beaver County videos can be viewed on the WBVP WMBA Facebook page. It's your chance to encounter the best of Beaver County with host Mike Romai this Thursday starting at 11. For more information, visit BeaverCountyRadio.com.
Hey, it's time to wake up, Beaver Valley. Hi, this is Pastor David Grove from the Church of the Redeemed of Beaver Valley. After over 2 years on the air, it seems that some of you still cannot get up in time. So I've got good news. Wake Up Beaver Valley is moving to a new time, now airing from 9 to 10 this and every Saturday morning. It's time to wake up and turn our hearts back to the cross of Jesus Christ. So I invite you to wake up early this Saturday. To find out more, it's Wake Up Beaver Valley, Saturdays from 9 until 10 a.m. on Beaver County Radio. God bless you.
As one of the first law firms in the country to file asbestos claims, Goldberg, Persky & White's success stems from a deeper understanding of our clients. Many of GPW's Pittsburgh attorneys had family members who worked in the steel industry, and their blue-collar upbringing has given them the unique ability to personally relate to the hardworking men and women who are suffering from lung cancer and mesothelioma. When choosing a law firm, choose the law firm that treats you like one of its own. If you have lung cancer or mesothelioma, call 1-800-COMPLEX. Goldberg, Persky & White, truly working lawyers for working people.
As in all human conflict, adults fight and children suffer. Today, 7.5 million children in Ukraine need to find water and shelter. They need safety and school. They need a place to sleep and comfort in the dark. Show them the world cares. Support UNICEF. On the ground in Ukraine, we won't stop until every child is safe. UNICEFUSA.org/Ukraine crisis.
Beaver County Radio's news source, 95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, and streamingradio.com. Here's Frank Sparks.
And good morning, as today's forecast is calling for scattered afternoon showers. High is going to be 70 degrees. We'll have a complete Beaver County Radio weather forecast coming up for you right after we have this look at news. With yesterday being the primary election in Beaver County, 24.36% of the registered voters in the county cast a ballot at the poll place, with all precincts reporting a total of 27,395 ballots were cast of the 112,464 registered voters in the county. 21.84% of the registered Democratic voters showed up, and 34.91% of the registered Republicans cast a vote here in the county yesterday. Beaver County Radio News correspondent Sandy Giordano is checking with Beaver County Elections Bureau to see how far along they are with counting the mail-in ballots at this time. Once we have an update for that, we'll let you know. In what was anticipated to be one of the most competitive races for the U.S. Senate here in the state of Pennsylvania, John Fetterman soundly defeated Connor Lamb and Malcolm Kenyatta. Fetterman received 59% of the vote on the Democratic side, along with Connor Lamb receiving 26%. Kenyatta only received 10% of the vote. Then over on the Republican side, still too close to call at this point, Mehmet Oz holds about a 1,600 vote lead right now over Dave McCormick. So once we get those final results for that race as well, we'll let you know. Going to be an interesting race once we get to the fall. In a statement that was released by Joe Calvello, the Director of Communications for Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, that was received by Beaver County Radio last night, we found out that John Fetterman has completed a successful procedure to implant a pacemaker along with a defibrillator inside his body. The procedure began at 3:15 p.m. yesterday. He has been given the all clear that it was successful. He is resting at the hospital and recovering well. John continues to improve every day, and he is still on track for a full recovery. A lawsuit against Swickley Academy is alleging that 4 teachers were fired from their roles of opposing racial discrimination during a purge of administrators. The lawsuit says the teachers supported Douglas Leak, who filed his own separate lawsuit. He was a black administrator who was replaced by a white woman, although the school said he was let go due to declining enrollment and performance. The lawsuits are the fallout, where the teachers said Swickley Academy tried to get them to forget the past and teach both sides of slavery after a group of parents complained about their kids' curriculum. One teacher claimed she was reprimanded for stirring the pot concerning racial issues, and the school viewed the group of teachers as the ringleaders. The teachers, all they're asking for is to be reinstated to their positions, compensated for lost wages, and for opportunities. The Community College of Beaver County is proud to release 304 names of both full-time and part-time students who achieved either the President's List or the Dean's List honors for the spring 2022 semester. To be named to the President's List, students must have completed at least 12 hours of credit, bearing courses in which performance grades are awarded, and have received a 3.75% grade point average or above for this semester. Dean's List honors must have completed at least 12 hours of credit-bearing courses in which performance grades are awarded and have received a 3.25 to 3.74 grade point average for the semester. Now, you can see the complete list of honorees at our website at beavercountyradio.com. A former choir teacher at Wilmington Area High School is facing criminal charges after court documents say that she had an inappropriate relationship with a student. New Wilmington Police Department says an investigation into 26-year-old Olivia Lewis Orts began after the principal of the school received a call from Orts' husband reporting the alleged relationship. As a mandated reporter, the principal reported the allegation to the police department. Police held interviews with the 17-year-old student involved in the incident, who told officers that they considered Orts to be a safe adult whom they trusted and confided in. The student also said the relationship allegedly turned into a romantic one that resulted in sexual activity. Officers say that Orts communicated with the student outside of school, verbally via cell phone and through text-based messaging. Orts surrendered to police on May the 16th and was committed to the Lawrence County Jail. Her bond was set at $150,000. Her preliminary hearing is set for May the 25th.
Here's the Beaver County forecast on 95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, and streaming at beavercountyradio.com.
Scattered afternoon showers today with a high of 70 degrees. Overnight tonight, showers and thunderstorms with a low down to 58. Tomorrow, scattered showers and thunderstorms mainly in the morning. Otherwise, mostly cloudy, then gradually becoming sunny with a high of 80. Friday, mostly sunny, hazy, hot, and humid with a high of 90. Saturday, scattered showers and thunderstorms after 2 p.m. Otherwise, it's going to be partly sunny and hazy and hot and humid. High's also going to be 90 degrees. Then on Sunday, showers likely mainly before 2 p.m. High's going to be 71. Monday, partly sunny and a high of 68 degrees. Our newscast this hour is being brought to you by MRS Physical Therapy, with 2 locations, one Stone Point Landing in Bridgewater, the other Cranberry Physical Therapy on Route 19 in Cranberry. If you'd like more information about MRS Physical Therapy, go to mrsphysicaltherapy.com. That is a look at the news for now. I'm Frank Sparks, 95.7 and 99.3 FM, presented by St. Barnabas, 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, and beavercountyradio.com.
You don't have to have had an accident, suffered a sports injury, or undergone surgery to take advantage of the benefits of physical therapy from Dale Reckless at MRS Physical Therapy. At a recent live broadcast at MRS Physical Therapy in Bridgewater, Dale Reckless talked about treatment for the common foot pain condition, plantar fasciitis.
Plantar fasciitis is a pretty common thing, and I tell my patients, don't wait to come and get some treatment for it. The longer you wait, the more chronic it becomes, and we'll still fix it, but it'll just take longer. If you come to see me when you're first getting the symptoms, then I can take care of it a lot quicker. What I do with plantar fasciitis is we give some stretches to do. I do a lot of hands-on exercise, and then I also do an evaluation of how they walk and how they stand. They need the hands-on work that I do to help cure the plantar fasciitis.
If you need physical therapy for any reason, choose the place that your friends and neighbors do. MRS Physical Therapy in Bridgewater and Cranberry Physical Therapy in Cranberry. Visit mrsphysicaltherapy.com.
Thanks for tuning in to Beaver County Radio, created by local people in the St. Barnabas studio. 1230 WBVP Beaver Falls and 1460 WMBA Ambridge.
It is 1230 WBVP and 1460 WMBA and 99.3 FM presented by St. Barnabas and 95.7 FM. And I look across, and Dale Reckless of MRS Physical Therapy is my guest, along with Dr. Eric Enterbel, who Dale brought in to basically introduce to the county. So I'm going to ask you this. What does an ear, nose, and throat guy do that I don't automatically think, okay, he sticks stuff in my nose? What is your specific specialty?
Well, that's a great question, because I feel like there's a lot of confusion about that, because people just think of ear tubes and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so there's a very large breadth of ear, nose, and throat. And so we're one of the specialties that does both the medical care and surgical care. So there's no division like cardiology and cardiac surgery. We do the medical care for ear, nose, and throat issues and the surgical care. So, for example, if you think of the nose, so issues with the nose would be trouble breathing through the nose, deviated septum, allergies. A lot of people get allergies, especially this time of year.
Oh, yeah. Well, how would you – now go ahead. And
I was going to say surgically, we can do septal surgery or sinus surgery if people get chronic sinusitis.
Okay.
So for sinus issues too. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's going to say what surgery would fix having allergies, but you just explained it. How bad do the allergies have to get before you say, you know what, your best bet's going to be, we're going to go in and deal with it?
So, so for allergies, that's more of a medical kind of an issue. It's more if you get a chronic sinus infection.
That's the medical side rather than the surgical side.
Correct.
How much does it streamline that you don't have to go to a different doctor when you're possibly considering the other option?
I think that helps a lot, because as some people are aware, it can be difficult to get referrals depending on their insurance. There can be some hoops to jump through to find a provider that's in network for them. Whereas if they see me for their allergies for several years and then they get an issue with their sinuses secondary to their allergies, I can take care of that too for them.
What other specialties did you consider besides ear, nose, and throat?
I also considered general surgery was another option. What really drew me to ear, nose, and throat was the depth and the breadth of it. So for ear, nose, and throat, we go from medical to surgical, as I discussed. We also treat all ages. So I've treated patients as young as newborns and as old as nonagenarians, which means in their 90s.
I was going to say, what? I know Octa. I didn't even know. There's more of a breadth with ear, nose, and throat than there would be with general surgery. Just body parts, I would think there's more general body parts than those three mentioned.
Yes. The difference, I would say, is with general surgery, a lot of times, depending on where you're practicing, you can get roped into a pretty specific focus within general surgery. A lot of people are subspecializing nowadays, whereas with ear, nose, and throat, I feel like you can still do a lot of the breadth of ear, nose, and throat.
Why are people specializing? That's what they end up being known for at their practice?
Partially.
Yeah.
Partially is there's very good evidence that the more you do of something, the better you get. That came initially out of general surgery, and now there is evidence for thyroidectomy that the more you do, the better you get of it. The other thing is as we go further through medical knowledge, medical care, we learn more and more about the specifics of everything, and therefore, by necessity, you can only do so much, and so you have to specialize in order to keep current on your particular issue.
How nervous were you the first surgery you had to perform?
Oh, of course, I was nervous.
I want my doctor to be nervous, but don't misunderstand. I don't want cavalier coming in juggling scalpels.
Well, there's definitely a balance there.
Okay.
So the first time I went into surgery, of course, it's in residency. Residency is where you're not fully licensed yet for your first year, and you're underneath an attending physician. That means that's the doctor that is training you how to do things. Mm-hmm. And just like any other trade, initially they'll essentially do it and show you, and then slowly you partake more and more in the operations through the 6 years of training after medical school.
Would you ever want to be an attending?
I am an attending.
All right.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Would you ever want to be? Who's in charge when you're first learning?
The attendings are first.
You're an attending now?
Yes.
Okay. Talk about that transition from somebody looking over your shoulder, and understandably so, to now you're the person looking over somebody else's shoulder.
It's definitely an interesting transition because I remember my first patient as an attending. I didn't have a resident at the time, and so it was just me with this person.
Okay.
It was a very simple issue, one I had treated with a lot of backup before, but one that I can treat easily. And I remember being somewhat nervous. Oh, did I miss something? I probably spent an hour and a half on an issue that should have taken 15 minutes just because I didn't have the backup that I was used to mentally. So definitely a psychologic.
No, Dr. Interval, I want you as a surgeon. No, please, if you're working on me, take the extra 5 minutes and look for the spare parts.
And that's what I tell people. So a lot of the surgeries I do, there are some complex nerves that we have to make sure that we preserve, nerves that help to control people's voice box or people's face. And I'll tell them, I'll take the extra 15 or 30 minutes if need be to make sure we keep it safe. I don't want to try to be the fastest surgeon. It's always good to be fast, but only in a safe way. And so I'll take the extra time if I need to in order to make sure we keep those nerves working.
How much more bedside manner is necessary when you're talking about doing surgery that could affect the way a person perceives themselves and how they look? The bedside manner is different than if you're working on my knee, I would think.
I agree. I think that when it comes to head and neck surgery, a lot of the head and neck is what makes people who they are. So obviously speaking, communicating with other people, swallowing. A lot of our social gatherings are around the dinner table. And so if you're having trouble swallowing and that's affecting you, then that can affect you negatively from a social standpoint too. And kind of that segues nicely into talking about the hearing issues too, because as the population ages, we're seeing a lot more hearing issues as well. And there's new evidence that shows that the worse somebody's hearing is, they start to get into a cognitive decline. What that means is if you don't use it, you lose it. They're not using their brain as much. And so that does make people more at risk for dementia, which is something that hearing aids have actually been shown to help protect against.
Dale, you've talked about that as far as the socialization. When people hear more poorly, they more remove themselves from society. And at MRS Physical Therapy, you've treated that, and you've seen people basically come back to society because they can hear again. Do people recognize the cognitive decline, or is that part of it that you don't recognize it if they don't get help?
A lot of times it's the significant other, the spouse, that notices the cognitive decline versus the person themselves. That's not uncommon. It's usually you're the caregiver, the spouse, that recognize that kind of cognitive decline.
All right. How many more doctors are we going to need in the next year? Going back to your original, what we were talking about, Eric has come in because we need doctors in Beaver County. Are we going to continue to need doctors? I can't imagine, as good as Eric is, he's not going to fill all the voids in the medical.
Yeah, there absolutely is. There continues to be a lot of doctors that are retiring. There's neurologists that have already retired. There's podiatrists that have retired. Orthopedic doctors that have retired. And that was kind of my thought, to start bringing in some new doctors to introduce to the people in Beaver County. As I saw, there becomes a great need. There's a void in Beaver County with doctors, in my perspective. So we need to refill those voids with new doctors coming in.
How do we do it?
I don't know that I have that answer how to bring the doctors in, but it's very important for our residents of Beaver County to get the medical attention that they need.
All right. Let me ask you, Dr. Enneper, why did you say, yeah, this is a good place for my practice? Was it because of your field of specialty and the aging population? Was it as simple as that, or does more go into it when it comes to you're being recruited? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so that's a great question. There's a lot of things that play into it, obviously. From this standpoint, I saw that there was a big need. And so for better or for worse, medicine is partially a business too, and I saw that there was a lot of opportunity out here too. But that's not really the main issue. The main issue is, the reason it's an opportunity is because there's a lot of people that need medical care. For instance, there are a lot of thyroid issues out in Beaver County that basically they had to drive 40 or 60 minutes to get the care they needed. Whereas if that's something I can step in and fill the void, then that's a great thing to do.
What are the thyroid issues? Because that sounds like it's a pressing issue here already. What's causing that? What are your treatments for that? When you see somebody, what are they telling you?
Yeah, so a lot of times I see people because they're either their primary care physician or their OBGYN palpated a nodule. So palpating means they felt. And so when somebody's primary doctor feels their neck, feels a nodule is just a something. It's like a gumball in the thyroid.
You can feel that there's something in there different.
Correct.
Okay.
Or sometimes people get, for example, a CAT scan or an x-ray for a trauma, and then incidentally they're found to have one of these. And so in some ways, as long as they do well from the trauma, then that maybe actually help them from a medical standpoint to find this nodule that they otherwise would not have found.
Are there more thyroid issues in Western PA than other places?
No, it's about average. With that said, there's a lot of thyroid nodules throughout the country. The incidence of thyroid cancer is actually increasing through the decades. Probably for a number of factors. One of those is definitely detection. As our CAT scans and MRIs get better and better, we're finding them smaller and smaller.
Meaning the cancer that we didn't know existed before, we're finding it now.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
What other reasons would there be for that specific issue to be coming up? Has anybody done studies on it?
The other, it's thought that there's a lot of environmental factors at play. The two main risk factors people think about from a thyroid cancer standpoint are either exposure to radiation, not just routine medical imaging, but more, for example, the Fukushima disaster, nuclear disaster.
Okay.
And then the other main risk factor is a family history of thyroid cancer. Other than that, it's not exactly known why the incidence is increasing, other than the factors we've talked about. The good news, though, is the risk of death from thyroid cancer is not increasing. It remains very, very low, which is great news.
Which lends itself to us catching it earlier, I guess.
Catching it earlier, and the other thing that has helped too is there are some more advanced techniques to tell which nodules are more likely to be bad nodules that need surgery, or are these nodules that can be safely watched with ultrasound.
Yeah. Dr. Eric Enneper is my guest. Dale Reckless of MRS Physical Therapy is my guest. What's the most common issue that you see in your patients, doctor? With Dale, it's somebody jacks up their back, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably hearing loss. So a lot of people come into the office with hearing loss, and there's a lot of different reasons that somebody can have hearing loss. The best is if somebody walks in with hearing loss and I pull some wax out of their ear and then they're cured. That's very satisfying.
Do they not feel gross?
It depends on the person.
Okay.
For example, my wife has 1 millimeter of wax, and I have to remove that diligently for her. Whereas we'll get some people that walk in and their entire ear canal is plugged full of wax, and so it depends on the person.
Okay, how do you remove it? With saline? Wash it
No, I
out?
generally don't do the washing
Okay.
because there's a small risk of actually hurting the eardrum by flushing a bunch of water in through there.
Okay.
So I use a microscope, so not like a microscope from chemistry class, but essentially it lets me see the ear canal magnified.
Mhm.
And so what's quite small, I can see quite large. And then I use special tools to remove the wax. The biggest tool that I use, though, is the microscope, so you can see what you're doing.
All right. And that's when you look up and say, okay, there are issues here. They're balanced. What do they come with you more? I got a balance issue or I got a hearing issue? Or do they come with one and you find the other one and send them to Dale?
Yeah, so that's a common issue, too, is they'll come in for one thing, and for better or for worse, ear, nose, and throat issues are so common. Usually when you start talking to them, then they'll say, oh, I also have allergies, or I also have some balance issues, and then you try to help them with that as well. So there's definitely a lot of overlap with those kinds of things.
And they don't connect that one might be somehow associated with the other until you
A lot of
explain it?
people do.
Do they? Okay.
But definitely some people don't realize that their dizziness can be due to conditions that also cause hearing loss. There are some conditions that do that.
I want to talk about hearing aids because I've got two experts with me. The hearing aid commercials that I see on television at a fraction of the cost, are those legitimate hearing aids? Or is that just somebody trying to make a dollar with late night television? Dale, you want to go first?
I'm going to pass to Dr. Interval on that one.
Okay.
So it depends on what you're seeing that's advertised. So there's different classes of things that people would think of as hearing aids. Historically, hearing aids have not been over the counter, where you have to go into an ear, nose, and throat, or at least an audiologist,
Right.
get an official hearing test, make sure that your hearing loss is not from a condition that could potentially be dangerous if it's left untreated, and then you get your hearing aids as long as that's the case. Aside from that, there are some assistive listening devices, as they're called, which is essentially just amplifying the sound.
That's the commercial. It's an amplifier. It's not a hearing aid. And I thought that's the same thing. It's not.
So hearing aids are pretty specialized. So they're tuned to your specific hearing test. So if you have a hearing loss in the high frequencies and not in the low, it'll only amplify the sounds in the high frequencies.
Like dialing in an EQ, an equalizer.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Well, then what does an amplifier do? Just turn up everything?
Yeah, it turns up everything, and it's not quite as specialized. The issues become a little bit more complicated because now some hearing aids are going over the counter. Right around now, I think in a month or so, if I recall correctly, is when it's going to be official. And so some companies are starting to produce over-the-counter hearing aids. Those are not for severe hearing loss, so you can't dial them up a lot. The goal is to try to see if that can increase the access to care. I think that's a good first step for some people that are starting to get mild hearing loss to get into the hearing aid issue. And then if they have issues, we're happy to see them, get a hearing test, and tell them if that hearing aid is going to work for them, or if they need to get a more specialized one for their particular needs.
Is there a danger that somebody will get a general use hearing aid over the counter and it can actually mask the real problem that could have been found or could have been dialed in with a legit or personalized hearing aid?
There's always a danger that somebody could be treating a disorder of the ear with a hearing aid that left untreated could become an issue. Now, those issues are quite rare. I'll give one example, would be something called a cholesteatoma, which is a fancy word for a cyst in the ear. These are rare, but people do get them. It's a cyst that's in the ear, and it can actually destroy the bones of hearing. It can erode into the brain. It can cause vertigo.
So it's not just a blockage in the hearing canal being taking up space. Correct. It's doing damage.
Correct.
To the structure.
If you get a cyst that's behind the eardrum, that's when it can really cause some damage. And so those are the kinds of issues that we don't want to just treat with a hearing aid. We want to talk to people about what damage that could cause over time.
How scary is that surgery to go, or how difficult is that surgery? You're talking about doing surgery to remove something behind a very vital thing in the eardrum.
So that surgery itself, it's difficult in that sometimes you need to do what's called a second look. So just like any cysts can come back, And with this particular type of surgery, you can't always see the cyst, and so sometimes you need to do a second look surgery about a year later.
How are you taking the cyst out if you can't see it? By feel?
Sorry if I was a little. So you do take out as much as you can see the first time, but the ear has a lot of nooks and crannies, and so if the cyst hides behind a nook or a cranny, if it's a cyst, it'll grow. So you come back a year later to see if there was a little bit left. With that said, we talked earlier about the depth and the breadth. This kind of ear surgery is something that has become very specialized. And so I actually don't do this particular kind of ear surgery. So sorry that I led us down this path, but it is this goes into people that only do ears and don't do thyroids and those kinds of things.
Dale Reckless of MRS Physical Therapy is my guest. So is Dr. Eric Interval. Is there anything that I should have asked either of you that I didn't? Because you've both been wonderful today. Dale, as always. Doctor, welcome.
Thank you very much.
You got out of Nebraska. For that alone, you need applause. Well done. Should I have asked you anything that I didn't?
I think that there's the world of ear, nose, and throat is something I'm passionate about and I could talk about for hours. And so I think that you shouldn't tempt fate there.
I could hear the passion. And when it comes to a doctor, that's what I want to hear. It's the same passion when I hear Dale talking about stretching and Dale lecturing me on how to shovel snow and all those things. Quickly, doctor, how can they get a hold of you?
So I have two offices. One is in Beaver and one is in Cranberry. Our phone number is 724-775-6602. We also have a website. It's entallergy.org. I don't know how we got that website, but I'm proud of my partner for getting it. entallergy.org.
Dale, how do they get a hold of you?
We also have two offices in Bridgewater and Cranberry. So it's great that we both serve the same clientele in Beaver County and Butler County. So our office in Bridgewater is right in the heart of Stone Point Landing. That number is 724-728-7550. And then the Cranberry office is on Route 19 right next to North Park Lounge. That number is 724-591-8121. And our website is mrsphysicaltherapy.com. If you go onto the website, you can search for all sorts of different diagnoses and exercises for free before you come to see us. But please give us a call if you have any questions. And again, thanks for Dr. Interval for coming out. I learned a lot today just hanging out and speaking with him as well. So
I know it.
Great.
Absolutely amazing. Keep bringing us, Doc. Keep recruiting, Dale. NCAA is looking the other way. Dale Reckless and Dr. Eric Interval have been my guests at Teleforum on Beaver County Radio.
Make plans to be a part of Wings and Wheels happening on Saturday, May 21st at the Beaver County Airport. Air Heritage, along with Beaver County Radio and the Community College of Beaver County, is pleased to present this one-of-a-kind event that features airplanes and automobiles. It's happening from 9 to 5 on Saturday, May 21st. Check out the display of some of your favorite classic machines, including